It was really good. I don't know what everybody is saying, honestly. I heard someone saying that they hope that all Broadway doesn't become like this. After seeing some shows that I've seen in the past week here, I don't even understand a statement like that. I think the special effects crew should have came out and taken a bow as well. This is an innovation of special effects that I really haven't seen in, such a long time. I've got a lot to say. I'll say it outside, but this is definitely a 100. Yeah. The story was so tight. I don't think I've ever seen a prequel done as well as this. It really has me looking forward to the next episode. I think in a couple minutes in here, there's going to be a whole heck of a lot of spoilers. But I had such low expectations coming into this thing. I usually try to stay away from reviews just so that my opinion isn't really tainted. But I took a little sneak peek, and it seems like it wasn't getting good reviews at all. And I think that these people are just snobby morons, if that's the case. What do you want if this isn't what you want? And that's coming from a born-again Christian perspective. That honestly, I feel like really convicted to even have gone to a show like this right now. I feel like there is such elements of it that was... Listen, it's well done, okay? But this is a very evil underpinning of this show and of this narrative. It has true satanic and witchcraft elements intertwined within the plot. I don't know if I ever picked up on that before in the television series, in the Netflix series. This is a show that I feel such hesitancy to recommend people to see, nonetheless, to bring your kids. This is like taking your kids to a horror story. But a horror story that is literally the finest I've ever seen. The actors did such a great job. There wasn't a second that the whole thing that I was bored. And it wasn't like this whole thing was being relied upon by the special effects. The special effects were, don't get me wrong, this was a huge part of the puzzle. The ingredients list without the special effects, I don't think I would have liked it as much as I did. But the storyline and the stagecraft was absolutely amazing. And there were so many different shifts and scenes from one to the other where every single decision that they made was absolutely excellent. I came out during intermission and there was a Christian concert going on outside over here in Times Square. And I really felt conflicted because I thought maybe like God's talking to me or something, because this show was evil. This show was a personification of absolute wickedness. And I felt like I had a choice to make as to whether I was going to go outside and worship with everybody or whether I was going to go back in and watch this show. And I was wrestling, wrestling hardcore. I made the decision to go back in and watch the show. I don't know if I made the right decision or not. Because like I said, the underlining plot of this show is complete wickedness, about letting us in, letting the evil in. It really put Stranger Things into a whole new light for me. It's been many years because I felt like in the first episodes I really didn't even know the Lord all that well. And in the second season and such, third season, I felt like this thing was jumping the shark. To put a brand new work like this on Broadway as a play and to leave me in suspense wanting more, man, I really do feel absolutely conflicted about recommending this show to you guys. But in terms of, does this show deserve a Broadway stage? Could it be done anywhere else? And at the Marriott Marquis Theaters, where we've got nice big seating for a 6'4" guy like myself, yeah, it was absolutely amazing. In the beginning, because the primary character, I don't know these guys' names, I don't follow it like that, but I'm all about the story, and this story was so tight. There wasn't a second that I was like, okay, I've seen that before, and it was all new. And as they tied in the characters that you're witnessing on stage, showing who are these characters that you saw on Netflix, everything was absolutely seamless. So this is an absolute 100. This is probably one of the best plays I've seen on Broadway. And I'm actually going to go watch all these reviewers right now to see who rated this thing so low and why, because you have got to stick up your butt. I mean, unless you're, I should be rating this a 0 as a born-again Christian, because, like I said, I don't want the kids to be inside this place. I was sitting right next to 2 kids, okay? A kid on the left and a kid on the right. And honestly, because, you know, I'm not overweight, but I'm extremely tall, I was like, good. I'm going to be able to, you know, comfortably sit. But at the same time, I was looking at their parents, and I'm just like, this is what you choose to bring your kids to, you know? And it's not like they were frothing from the mouth or anything, or they even loved it all that much. But I'll never bring my children to a horror story. And I feel like this horror story was a scary one. I mean, the only thing that came to mind is another show, Harry Potter, which I see every single show on Broadway every single year. And when I'm leaving a show on the shelf because either it's got, you know, themes I just don't want to expose myself to, or I have a 0 tolerance when it comes to witchcraft and when it comes to, you know, personification of evil and, you know, actual satanic imagery, I'm a little bit more acceptable to violence and action type of sequences and such, but I have a 0 tolerance when it comes to witchcraft and the demonic and the supernatural, because I know from firsthand experience, not just from the scriptures, of how real all this is. So there is a wickedness at the heart of this story that must come from some true encounter. It must, because the narrative as it's being told is so real that I can't help but wonder who was the writer and what is their experience in the occult, what is their experience in witchcraft, what's their experience in astral projection, DMT, ayahuasca, other things such as this. But in terms as a theatrical work of art, what could I say? What more could I possibly want from this thing? But as a born-again Christian, I will never let my children ever see a show like this. I feel bad for having gone to it myself. If you see now behind me, the worship event that I had a choice of going to when I came out of Intermission is now over. And I don't know, did I make the right decision? Of course I didn't. I don't know, I feel very weird on the inside right now because this show was so spectacular, and why did I love it so much? You know, that's the, I don't see horror films. I don't. And that's not because I don't want to, it's because I do want to so very much. You know, I'm a guy that used to see 10, 15 different haunted houses a year. I would drive across the states to see different various haunted houses and such. So this one slipped in under my radar. I had a feeling that what I was walking into, actually, as I was walking into a show, there was a guy who seemed like a homeless man that like aggressively got in my face and said something about God. His hands were like painted white. I thought he was just a crazy person, but I also felt like maybe he was giving me a warning. And I felt that before I came in, but I'm back in New York for a couple of weeks, and I'm so used to already ignoring the crazy people. I do feel like this is a warning from God. So, you know, I gotta watch myself because I like this show way too much. Way too much. I'm gonna be thinking and praying on this a lot more, so again, does it deserve a Broadway stage? Yeah, okay. But this is probably one for a show that's built for kids, supposedly, according to the audience. I have never seen a personification of evil so masterfully well done in the showmanship. I'm not talking about acting here, just the way that the haunted house feeling was brought to life on the stage. Yeah. I don't know what to say. Alright guys, this is 100, unfortunately. I wish I was giving this thing a 0 so I could say that nobody should be able to go see it. But instead it's absolutely a 100. And on top of that, these people that are rating it poorly, I'm gonna go watch all of them right now because I think you're freaking insane. And I just saw another show earlier, 5 years before, whatever the heck it was called, 5 years after. It was a horrible show. And maybe it's in contrast to this, is why I like this one so much. But yeah, you guys are absolutely retarded if you don't like this one.
But they're Christian are preaching that God knows they have the love of His Son. They have the love of Jesus. And Jesus is with them. Constantly He leads them and He protects them. The devil can't come close to them. The rest phony Christian, the devil is leading them.
I was outside actually. I'm not interested in speaking with the actors, but I was tempted because I almost want to do a spiritual interview with these people. Because like I said, I feel like the show was so demonic in terms of storyline that there has to be some underpinnings of the talent here behind the scenes. It's got some sort of involvement in the cult. Some of these people absolutely need Jesus. To work in this show day after day like this, I think I got to pray for myself after this show. I probably have to confess to my brothers and sisters I even saw such a thing like this. I'm really at a complete and total, like, how can I be such a big fan of the work of art of this thing and the stagecraft and the mastery of what it is, but yet be so morally conflicted with the messaging behind it. I mean, the messaging behind this show is basically about the struggle of this kid, to allow Satan inside of him. And Satan's personified as the stranger things, the other world per se, this veil behind the world. You know, in the book of Ephesians, in the 6th chapter of the book of Ephesians, it talks about how we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities, and rulers of darkness behind the scenes who manipulate mankind. And this show was a personification of those powers of what we call in the unseen realm. Shame on me for seeing this show, to be honest with you guys. Absolutely shameless on me for seeing it. But I just, the theater fan of myself, I'm an addict. I'm a complete and total theater addict. And as a theater addict, 100. I mean, this thing really should win every award. The direction was absolutely top notch. I think the acting of the primary lead, I don't know what direction he could go in. I felt in the beginning of Intermission that I wanted to say that he had some overacting going on. I'd love to see further roles and see how this is explored and how this sort of mutates a little bit. I think overall, I don't want to offer any criticism whatsoever because the performance was overall masterful and there's a lot of physicality to a show that involves such rancid demonic possession elements. Of course, none of this is laced with the demonic. Although they use the word Satan and they use the word the devil over and over and over in this show, I mean, many of these people waiting in line right now don't even know what type of witchcraft they've been exposed to for the past 3 hours, including myself. Netflix, wow. They ended the show, which I'll say, it concluded with how it looks like when a show ends on Netflix and it says, do you want to see the next episode, do you want to view the credits? And a mouse cursor came onto the screen and they clicked on view credits and then the stage rolled up. This is masterful direction. The technical talent, the choreography, I mean, the lighting, the sound design is absolutely out of this world. Wow. And in fact, they even closed the show out with a musical number. Okay, so maybe that was added at the last minute because of the mixed reviews that this thing has been getting. But wow, I feel like the pompous attitudes of the New York City review squad that are lowly rating this thing is going to be knocked out of the water by the fans that are going to come see this thing from all across the world. The last time I've seen a show as good as this, it was actually at this very same theater. It actually had transferred to this theater, and it was Beetlejuice. And we know that Beetlejuice was, is this some of the same technical talent that was on that show? Because they had that vibe that was going on. The staging was so wonderful. If you compare this to Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, they had some incredible stagings there when time was frozen, and the way that they constantly went in and out of time during the Harry Potter show. I thought that was innovation, but this sets a whole other level of innovation. So technical talent, wow. I'm going to be watching, I'm going to go look up all of your names, and I'll be following every single show that you look at, because every show that you're involved in, because this was masterful. You didn't even see a line, okay, in terms of the staging. People were being pulled up out of the air. Or they have one scene where, supernatural power was executed, and he killed a girl or made an attempt to kill a girl, and the stairwell dropped to the ground, and it turned to black and white and slow motion and fell downward at a 90-degree angle. You didn't see a single safety line in any of this production. The very fact that they had this giant, huge, Stranger Things, whatever that monster type character that comes from the ceiling down, and they used that, like that thing probably cost $300,000 to build, and yet they used it for only a minute of the entire show. So I feel like they've held back so much. This thing must have gone through constant rehearsals and constant changes during previews and even before in order to turn it into the masterpiece that it is. 100. Definitely get prayed up before you go to Stranger Things. And if you're a born-again Christian, and in fact, I don't recommend anybody see this show. It's a 100, but nobody should see it, okay? Because it's demonic to the roots. This is Matt Lepasic in full prime double speak mode at this point in time, okay? Because 100, it's one of the best plays I've ever seen, but it's also the most demonic, supernatural thing I've ever seen in my life. And yeah, so in the name of Jesus, I rebuke this show. But at the same time, in the name of the theater crazy addict that I am, I give it a 15 thumbs up.
Alrighty, Stranger Things, the play. Wow. Well, I really have a lot of conflicted feelings about this show. Not because of the nature of the quality of the show, because it was actually really good. It's just that after having seen it and everything that happened today and how I'm feeling afterwards, I'm pretty sure that God warned me not to see this show. And I'm going to fill you in with those details of what happened here. I've already given you the review, where I stand as I left the production. And I really, listen, I'm a software engineer. I've got a technical background in pretty much everything you can imagine. And I'm also a theater addict, been at this theater addiction now for 20 plus years. I've seen over 1,000 shows. And when you say that, people don't believe you. But I do have the playbills to back it up. Listen, I know what Stranger Things is, and I thought it was just going to be, cheesy, a not so good production. But it's because this production was so good that made it so very evil, because it stood out as a battle between good and evil. And we're witnessing on stage is this institution that wants to let this kid be filled with darkness and filled with evil, and even trying to rile him up in fits of anger so that he would be fully possessed. And I have a sort of a zero tolerance policy, like I said earlier, when it comes to witchcraft, when it comes to, like, I'm a guy that before I met Jesus in 2017, I used to go to minimum of 5 different haunted houses a year. A lot of times like 10, 15, traveling state to state. I mean, a horror film would be the first film that I would see. So I'm not a prude, it's just that I have an appetite for these things. And going into it, I had a feeling that I shouldn't see this show, just like back in the day with Moulin Rouge. I had a feeling I shouldn't see the show. It doesn't have to be supernatural. It's just, I know that this is on the darker edge of things. It's just that with that 80s nostalgia, I thought perhaps I could get away with it. But now after having seen the show, I've went to dinner, I've done the reviews, I stood outside, I want to see if I can catch some of the technical talent that's available to speak with them. I want to see if I can catch the writer, the director, or somebody to engage into some spiritual discussions with them, because I feel as if there is a spirit at loose in this show because of how well it is done. That when we applaud it, like every time before I went to applaud, I felt like I was applauding for the devil or something. Now, it's funny, it's not funny at all. It's like, am I Broadway backslidden? Am I allowing my idol of Broadway to cloud my vision and instincts? I think absolutely. It is very clear. I've seen some shows over the past 4 or 5 years that clearly I shouldn't have seen. Now, mind you, I did put them at the end of my list. Like, I saw everything else, and then I said I wasn't going to see that show, but then I did inevitably go see it, like Titanic, which I ended up liking a whole lot. But there's certain content that I like to stay away from. And I just go with my internal feeling, I go with my common sense, and I go with the scriptures. Now, this one here, it just is a complete and total illustration for me that it's not just a show about like aliens or some abstract evil. It's literally a show where they mention the devil, they mention Satan, and they're not preaching the Bible to you or anything, but this idea of entities that are outside of our field of view that are trying to get in, and they're trying to get inside of a body, inside of our temple, is a really true phenomenon. And that's what this show is actually depicting. And if you watched the television show, the Netflix series, or whatever, then obviously you already know that. But a lot of that time, for me, it was covered up by this 80s nostalgia, the 80s music associated with it. And online, the characters just feel a little bit different. This thing was just so well done from top to bottom, the acting and the technical production. Usually, it's like, remember when they first started introducing all of these projection screen stuff going back maybe 10 years ago? It was like, no, the theater is not a place where you want to have projections done. No projectors. Then, LED screens came in and it was still no. But we went a little bit overboard in the early years, but we found a way to minimally apply it, to use texture. And now in 2025, I feel like we've really struck that appropriate balance of how to use projection, how to use film within the theater. Sunset Boulevard blew that off the roof with a ridiculously horrible production that basically turned the theater into like a movie theater for no reason whatsoever, with no artistic talent. But this Stranger Things play did everything right in terms on the technical side. But it might have done things too right to where I'm wondering, like, why are you bringing your kids to see something like this? Not to be judgy, but looking all over the place, looking to my right, looking to my left, looking everywhere, there's kids all over the place. And it's like, this is a kid's production. This is a horror film that you're putting before your children's eyes. And you're opening them up to evil demonic spirits when they end up rooting for this show. By the rooting of this show and the applauding for the show and saying how good it is very likely to open up demonic doors of your appetites and cause cravings that want you to see more and more and more of this type of thing. I see it inside of me. This show was so good, I'm looking forward to the second one. And I mean, I think, like I mentioned it earlier, I avoided seeing Harry Potter: Cursed Child, but then I eventually gave in and I saw it, and I was amazed with the technical special effects. But for me, it's like when you do the technical special effects so well that it meshes with the story, it doesn't take over everything, yet it does become a centerpiece of the production. I have to say kudos to the directors, to the talent, to the technical team. I really was expecting, after the cast came out and gave their bows, like I would fully thought that perhaps the technical team is going to come out and do their bows as well. Like maybe that's something that we would see off Broadway. But these guys really need to be applauded because the lighting, insane, all right? Now, we were already working with the television show, which came with a wonderful, dynamic soundtrack. With the sound design here, the lighting, the staging, everything. The Stagecraft is absolutely magnificent. And the acting, I would say, with the exception of everybody except for that lead character. The lead character, which I'm not saying he was a bad actor or anything. I think he was a good actor. It was a difficult character to play as someone who's struggling with possession like this. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I think it's going to be interesting to see how that is performed by other people in the future if this show does carry on. Yeah. So this is the Saturday, May 31st performance that I saw, and it's a really good show. Really, really, really good. But what do I do with this whole spiritual dynamic of seeing a show like this? I feel like you definitely, it's not a joke. God is real. Demons are real. The supernatural realm, which is called the second heaven in the Bible, is real. And heaven and hell and a final judgment is real as well. So just because I'm not entitled to get away with mistakes like this. I've been in the Lord now for 8 years. And I really feel uneasy with myself because of how much I liked it. Why do I still like stuff like this so very much? It is unnerving. So yeah, I just wanted to get on here again and give you guys an insight and a warning because as I was biking home from Au Cheval, went to Au Cheval, I had their great, extremely overpriced prime rib sandwich. They were out of the mashed potatoes. I had to get their side salad, which is also very tasty. but a complete ripoff, that place. But this is New York City, so what are you going to do? Used to live in the Soho area, so I got my appetite addicted to that thing. But I called a buddy, took a run down there, saw that show. Saw and went and had a great dinner. But as I was explaining to him, and as I'm just processing the evening and the bike ride home, I was like, the title of this video should be "God tried to warn me," or "God warned me not to see this show." And I know we've got some repetition happening here because I've already did a review outside of the theater as I'm walking around. But gosh, what are you coming here to see? I don't know if you're even watching this at all. Perhaps just talking to myself with a new channel. It's always a rough start with these new channels. Sort of started doing these review things 20 years ago. But I want you guys to really sincerely, consider the spiritual dynamics and be prayed up before going into this show. And also, pray to Jesus, pray to Father for protection. Ephesians chapter 6 is a good place to start. We put on the full armor of God. But to put on the full armor of God and then put ourselves into the devil's playland like this, I don't know. That was a little much for me to walk out at intermission, just to take a breather, and have to sneak quick back. By the way, when you go to the Marriott Marquis Theater, do not wait in line at the bathroom like everybody else. Go up to the 5th floor or 6th floor, and you can use the bathroom up there. So, but when I went outside, they were having a Times Square Jesus movement worship event. And I literally walked outside and I heard like this blaring music. And for a second, I didn't know if I was like going crazy, if it was like a sign from God, even though it's not really true. But I did have a half second of thought of that. And then I noticed the proximity of the music that was coming to the right. And it's very frequent in Times Square that we do have these outdoor worship events, especially in the spring and the summer. And I usually attend them. And I walked over there to confirm that's what it was. It was like beautiful worship that was happening. It was like a powerful moment that I stepped outside. And I felt like that moment was a test where it's like, choose now, what it is that you want to do. Matt, do you want to go outside and worship, which you're going to find your friends over there, many of which you didn't even tell them you're in town, because you don't want to hurt your feelings or be obligated to hang out with them, because I'm here for my idol of Broadway. And do I, or not even Broadway, all of New York City theater. A lot of times after I see Broadway shows, I really enjoy having no Broadway shows left to see, because my off-Broadway and off-Broadway season begins, where I get to find, although after COVID, there's a whole heck of a lot less of off-Broadway shows to find like that. But nonetheless, I had to make a choice, and I didn't like that I had to make that choice, because I could have just went to the worship event, but I chose to turn around and to go back into this theater, albeit after a quick urination on the 5th floor. Gosh, yes. So it's sort of hard for me to give you a traditional type of review on this. I'm giving it a 100. Yes, it is an absolute 100. 100, 100, 100, 100, 100. If people disagree with that, I can debate to you, like, why would you not give the show 100? When I say something is 100, it means it's sort of like an absolute must-see in terms of under that banner of does it deserve having a Broadway stage. That's pretty much my only thing I care about is, was it entertaining? When there's 100 or 10,000 or 1,000, whatever it is, scripts to choose between, should this script have actually taken up a Broadway stage? And knowing that many people are going to come in and out of there as tourists, maybe 30% of them don't even speak English, and you're going to sell tickets regardless. Whether you make a profit or not is a whole other question. But there's a lot of us writers out there that are competing in order to get a chance. And when I find people creative directors and theater companies that are putting something onto the stage, or producers that are producing something that's like a home project or some sort of jukebox project, or it's just trash, I get really upset. Because sitting in a little box of a seat like this for me, I'm not flying. When I'm flying first class, I'm doing so being calculated. But when I come to New York City, even if I have an aisle seat, there's no first class seats, and box seats aren't the best seats. So I'm literally physically forcing myself into a little enclosed space because I enjoy the show so much. So tonight I was seated at row D, the Marriott Marquis. I knew I didn't have to see the house manager to try to get a seat reassignment to an aisle or anything, because a lot of times I can't get them. I just speak to the the house manager and they take care of me because I'm a giant. But in this case, I knew the Marriott Marquis, which I remember from like seeing the Frogs many years ago when I saw the Frogs with Nathan, whatever his name is. I remember sitting in that seat and be like, okay, Matt, remember that the Marriott Marquis, it was called something else back then, but remember no, actually I think it was the same name. Remember that this place has adequate seating compared to where I was the other night when I saw Smash, which I thought I was in the music box, okay, which I actually got stuck in that seat back in the day at the music box, but it was actually the Imperial. I didn't realize those two were assigned together. But we'll go into the Smash review in another one. So this one's all about Stranger Things. Yeah. So that's what I have to offer you. I have to offer you a spiritual insight about this show. And I feel like, you know, because of you who don't know the Lord or don't identify as being Christian, you know, if you do watch this, that my review, and it sounds funny to say that it was so demonic because it was so good, that that it's only going to make you want to go see it. And I really am issuing you a warning against this show. And if by some miracle somebody connected to the creative team sees this thing, I'd love to talk with you. I'd love to see what the inspirations are, if there's any type of you know, real witchcraft going on behind the scenes, what your appetite is for the occult, you know, who put this thing together. It really makes me tempted to go look into the Stranger Things background, that team. Because what you're going to find is that there's always, when there's a substance like this, people want to say that they're copying this, they're copying that. There's always someone who had an obsession with witchcraft or with the occult behind the scenes. And I'm not saying they were practicing it, but I'm saying they were around it, whether their father was a Freemason or they just had a light interest. This stuff doesn't come out of thin air at most time from the creative mind. This is coming from a creative team that you know, really knows something about what it is they're looking at here. Now, mind you, this is all goblins and, you know, crazy looking creatures that have like this alien-esque type of figure to it. And, you know, I know that the spirit world sometimes will reveal itself that way to you, but that is not truly how they look. These demons can masquerade as angels of light. They can come looking like a beautiful virgin. They can come looking like a scary monster. They can come looking like a great alien. However they want to reveal themselves, we know that they respond to the name of Jesus. That's it, guys. I think I've belabored the point. So this is a 100, but it's a 100 that you should not see.
Guiding them, the so-called churches, so-called churches, telling the devil, so Father, we not consume pretending Christians. I get so many mocking smiles.
Stand up, comedy guys. This guy's like a
I can take